this.
Of course. Thank you so much, Andy. And I guess I should say Congressman Levin. It's so exciting. It's really thrilling. I sometimes find that our reintroduction of some of our bills this term in some ways is just as exciting, if not even a bit more exciting than the first time we've introduced these bills, because of the scope and the closeness of possibility and also the progress that we've made since the last time we've reintroduced some of these bills. Over 2 years ago, we introduced the Green New Deal, which allowed for an entirely new frame for us to approach the climate crisis, which outright rejected this idea that jobs and justice and environmental progress are in competition with one another, and that in fact, we can create a just economy and millions of union jobs by actually transitioning and decarbonizing our economy and saving our planet. And the EV Freedom Act is a piece of legislation that upholds those core Green New Deal principles. And so I'm excited and thrilled to champion alongside Congressman Levin this legislation that is part of the Green New Deal suite of bills. And what is so important about this is that it's part of a much larger comprehensive approach to transportation, that we're making sure that we're not leaving any community behind, whether that is a community that is largely accessible by wheeled vehicles or by trains and mass transit. We are going to tackle all of this. And the EV Freedom Act is a really critically important aspect of this. Since the introduction of the EV Freedom Act last term, I have actually driven in an EV cross country. And I saw and experienced for myself firsthand what the actual impact on these network effects are. Now, for some people with certain cars, certain EVs, you might be able to swing a cross-country trip. However, what you'll notice is that if you are able to find some of these stations, a lot of them are in the parking lots of major companies and corporations. And if you are in a more rural community, if you're in a frontline community, if you're in a lower middle or middle income community, those chargers will not be as accessible to you. And so without something like the EV Freedom Act, we are naturally set up to allow this infrastructure to be built along lines and geography of privilege. And if we are going to meet our climate goals, we have to make sure that we are building infrastructure for all. And that includes EVs for all, and where they are appropriate. And so it's so incredibly important that we build out this infrastructure, and then also to hammer home this point that we are not going to allow the transition from a fossil fuel industry to an electric industry to be ununionized. We have to make sure that our transition to electric is better for workers, it creates dignified jobs, and that people are better off with a decarbonized electric economy than they are with a fossil fuel economy. And so the EV Freedom Act hits those points, and it makes sure that those investments and people getting those jobs are the people who need them the most, and in communities that have been disproportionately impacted, not just by the climate crisis, but our overlapping crises of environmental injustice and economic injustice as well. So I'm so thrilled to be reintroducing this with you. I remember 2 years ago, Andy, when we were reintroducing this bill, people were saying, this is impossible. It's pie in the sky. No serious Democrat is ever going to agree to building hundreds of thousands of EVs in less than in less than 10 years, let alone 5 years. And lo and behold, we have during that joint session, we heard about really building EV infrastructure across the United States in exactly that aggressive way that we were told was impossible just 2 years ago. And so I think it speaks to the amount of work that you have done, Congressman Levin, and the coalition building that you have created from the heart of from the heart of Motor City and the heart of just our union movement here in the United States. And so not only is this going to be good for workers, but we want to make sure that this transition is led by workers and the communities that are most impacted. So thank you so much for inviting me, for being here today, and let's get this thing done. 5 years, 500,000 EV charging stations. It is so doable. I'm almost tempted to say, let's go 1 million, Andy.